What's up guys, welcome back to another electric skateboard video. Today we're taking a closer look at the VX4 remote. This is the same remote that we're using for our Interstellar and our Endurance builds, as well as a lot of the different customs we build here in-house. Now, if you're using this remote as a replacement for your Interstellar or Endurance, or you're building something completely new, this is the video for you. So let's get into it. Quickly, we're gonna unbox this thing. We've got the instructions here. We have the remote itself. We have the actual receiver, really tight in there, but here we go, the receiver, a USB-C charging cable, the first UART cable, the second UART cable, and a PPM cable. Now this giant mess here, it's not too confusing, but let's break all these things down. So the first thing to look at is the actual remote. It's pretty self-explanatory. That's the actual remote itself. If you want a closer look at everything here, there is an instruction guide here, which is great. USB-C, this is how you actually charge your remote. And then now these cables and this is where we lose a few people here. So the thing is about this remote is that you can use it either UART or PPM. We've discussed more what that means in the VESC videos. UART is a digital signal versus PPM is an analog signal. We do include this PPM cable, but it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to use an analog signal with this remote because it doesn't actually forward any data to the screen. So it'll work, but the screen is pretty much useless. So at that point, you're kind of wasting money on the nice OLED screen if you're not going to use it. So we don't really recommend using the PPM cable, but it's here. Now the other two cables, it's either a 7-pin or an 8-pin connector based on the actual ESC you have. Now the Maker X units that we use have an 8-pin, so that's the one that we would use. So you can literally just push these together and you can just, if you don't want to count whatever one's longer, that's the 8-pin. There you go. So that's the 8-pin, that's what we're going to use. And then this cable just plugs into this port here. You can get the pins to line up and it should just connect, no problem. There we go. So now we've got the receiver and the cable there. And just as a quick refresher, here is a DV6. The power switch would go here, so we know that a receiver goes over here, and that would just simply plug in to your ESC just like that. Again, we go in more in depth on this in our actual VESC video. So if you haven't watched that, definitely watch that whole series actually. Okay, so moving on, let's actually get this remote set up. So if we click into here, you can hold the power button down and you'll see it turn on. And here we go. There's a lot of different data here. There's tons of different numbers and pieces of data here. So if you really want to know exactly what all that stuff means, in the instructions here, there is a great diagram about, and you can pause this video if you want to just read it from here, but every single piece of data here on the screen is laid out here if you really are interested in all the different temperatures and amperages and all that, so that you can take a look right there for you. So if you want to read that more, you can pause that. Okay, let's dive into the actual settings of the remote. So to start, you'll see that the throttle actually like controls the screen, so you kind of know that the remote is on, it's functional. But we do have to change two things to get the remote to actually communicate with your board. So we're going to go down here and we're going to hold down on what we call the speed mode selector here. So we're going to hold that down and we're going to get into the actual settings. Now here you can use the throttle to cycle through all the different pages here. We're going to go through all these pages later, but to start, we're going to go and find control type. Now here is one that we do absolutely have to change. If this isn't right, it's not going to work. So to actually click into this menu, we're going to single click the mode selector button, and then we can use the throttle wheel to cycle through. So in our case, we use a UART connection, so that's what we're going to pick. So UART is the selection, and then we're going to actually press OK with single tapping the power button. So now if you don't have that right, it's not going to communicate properly. So select UART there, and we're going to continue down to our ESC type. This is the second one that we actually absolutely have to get right. So again, we'll click into the menu with the speed selector button, and we're going to find the ESC type that we have. Now, if you have a FOC somehow, some way, if you still have one of these and this is what you would select, an FT ESC is just a different non-VESC based ESC that you probably won't have. And then FS ESC is what we're going to select for VESC based ESCs. So we're going to hit OK with the power button there. At this point, your remote should work. So what we're going to do now is we're going to actually hit, we're going to go into the settings one more time and start our pairing method. So we're going to hold down the speed mode button, and then we're going to click into and hold the speed mode button again. You can see that pairing starting, and now I'm going to go over here and I'm going to turn on my board. Pairing success, boom, there you go. So it's really fast. So at this point, I'm just going to barely touch it because the board's going to move. Yeah, you guys should be able to hear the motors maybe. Kind of. I'm not going to let it go because the board will actually go flying if I do that. Okay, but let's get this thing to actually work here. So I'm actually going to power the board off just to make sure I'm not shooting the board across my desk here. So now you can see that it has disconnected there. All right, so now this works as is, but the screen's not going to be right. So what we want to do now is adjust all the settings to make sure that the screen is reporting speed and distance properly. So again, we're going to go back into our remote here, hold down the speed mode selector, and now we're going to run through all these pages again. So this IAP receiver, I don't know why it's so early in these settings, but this is to update your receiver. Totally don't need to do that right now. Moving on, control type, we already set that for UART. ESC type, FS-ESC, which we set for our VESC-based ESC. Battery cells, 12. So now this would be battery cells in series. This board is a 14S board. So we're going to enter that menu, and we're going to use the throttle wheel to adjust it until it says 14. Hit OK, and we'll continue moving down. Pole pairs. Pole pairs is always going to be 7 unless your motor manufacturer specifically tells you that it's not. So almost all electric skateboard motors have 14 poles or 7 pole pairs. So this by default should read 7. If it doesn't, change it to 7. Moving down, this is where your preferences come into play depending where you live. Here in America, we're using freedom units, so miles per hour it is. Moving down, wheel type. This is important because it's going to ask us different questions based on this answer. So do we have hub motors or do we have like belt driven? So we're going to enter this one. Our options are pulleyed, hub motor. For us, we're using pulleys. You'd also select this if you're using gear drives. Pretty much anything with different teeth counts, right? So we're gonna hit OK on that one. And now it's gonna ask us a couple other questions. Wheel diameter, we're gonna move this up to 105 millimeters. So I have a set of MAD 105s on this board here. 103, 104, 105, okay, good. Moving on, motor pulley. So this is where we would go and select this. We have 16 teeth on our motor pulleys. So we're gonna hit OK there. Next are wheel pulleys. In this case, we have 36T. So the default numbers are very weird and totally not even close to what you'd probably use on your board. But here we go, and 36, hit OK there. So from there, we're pretty much set. Our speed and our distance would be correct at this point, but we're gonna keep moving and just get through all the rest of the settings really quick. Throttle sensitivity is an interesting one. So there's different levels. It defaults, I believe, to 3. Throttle sensitivity pretty much just goes into how sensitive is your input when you're riding your board. So you can experiment with these. 3 should be the most sensitive, and then 0 should be the least sensitive. It's hard to explain. You're not going to mess anything up, though, if you just go through and try these. So just try them out, see what you like the most. We'll leave it to the default level 3. Moving on, this is the joystick deadband. So the joystick deadband is more or less how long of a delay there is when you're starting to push the throttle before the actual input starts. So default's 5. We've had great luck with 5, but if you'd like to increase this to add a little bit of a buffer so you're not accidentally maybe hitting your remote, or maybe you want like the most responsive setup possible, you could bring this down to less. I do believe, though, if you do it too low, there's a possibility of like false positives. So you want to be really close. So 1% is the least you can do, and then 25% is the max. 25% would be a lot of throw, though, before it actually worked. So I'm going to bring this back to 5%, the default. I've had great luck with that. So continuing on, low battery warning on. So it'll let you know if your battery is getting low, I think on both your remote and your board. So that's pretty cool. So if you don't want your remote to buzz at you and remind you, you can turn that off. The theme color, this one's cool too. You can change it from blue, red, or green. So for example, if we wanted to change it to red, when you go back out, you can see that everything's kind of got a red vibe here now instead. So let's go back. It also resets you every time you leave, so you got to go find your space again. Okay, default speed gear is high, so that means that when you turn your remote on for the first time, you've got here there's a low, high, and medium mode. If you want your remote to just automatically turn on in a specific mode and you don't want to have to adjust it each time, which you can adjust by hitting this button here, and you can see it goes from low, medium, and high, and you can feel your remote actually vibrate each time you do that. I usually ride a medium, honestly, so honestly I would actually probably be better off switching this. So again, you have to kind of run through all of these settings every time you leave, but I'm actually going to change this to medium. So every time I turn my remote on, it just is always on medium. Moving on, cruise control switch is on. I don't ever use it, but I just leave it on. You can add cruise control by hitting, I think, the power button while riding. So yeah, it's an okay feature, but I don't really use it very often, but it's there. The reverse switch on, you can do that by double tapping the, actually, I think you actually have to have your board on. Let's try here. See, there's the example of the battery. But yeah, if you double tap the speed mode button, you can see that you've got reverse and forward. But that only works though if you've got a current, if you have current no reverse mode set on your ESC, it doesn't work. But if you just have current, then it will work. So there's just a couple of different settings in the best that you have to set up for that to work. But nonetheless, that's the setting that's there. I'm gonna turn my board off really quick again, so I don't actually go flying there. Okay, so moving past, we're gonna continue moving forward. We're almost done here. Gear lock switch off. So if you wanted your remote to not actually change your mode here when you're clicking this button, and you just wanted this button to pretty much be off, you could do that there. So again, I'm gonna leave it on. I like being able to switch my remote. Moving back through, here we go. Now this is your odometer. As you ride your board, this will be added up. And again, it looks like we have 0.015 miles just from this quick bench test that we did earlier. It will add up mileage based on the remote settings. So if you change your wheels out or anything like that, or you change your gearing, you have to change it in your remote or else it will not calculate properly. So just make sure that your remote always matches what current wheels and setup you have on your board. If you really wanted to get rid of this, I don't necessarily suggest it. I like keeping that. This is like a lifetime mileage, so it'll continue adding up as long as you're riding. Even if you turn your remote off, turn your board off, and you come back, that stays. But if for whatever reason you wanted to reset it, you can hold the, there you go. You just reset it to 0. So if you wanted to do that, you could. This is a fault check, so it'll just, if your ESC ever throws a fault, it'll just kind of log that there for you to check later. And then finally, the last page is the version number. So this is rocking software 1.2.1. The bottom here also worth mentioning that we've got 2 bars. The bottom bar here, it'll go across the bottom. That's the battery life of your remote. And then here, I'll turn my board back on one more time. Board's going on and off today. From here, you've got your board battery life, once it actually connects. There you go. So my board is actually quite low, but that secondary small line up top, that's your actual board's battery, which is cool. And then there's one more thing, is this is the main like data-driven screen. If you just want like a simpler screen, you can actually double tap or just like hit both of these at the same time. You actually, I mean, it has to be pretty close. There we go. Hit them both at the same time. And here we go. Now it's just a simpler screen with less data. So a lot of people like this look a lot more. I actually think it is a lot cleaner, though I'm one for having more data than less. So I kind of use the first one. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's how you set up your VX4 as a very in-depth real-time view. A lot of our videos are real-time, so maybe they're a little bit longer, but at least you know what you're doing at the end of it. So hopefully this helps. And if you have any questions, please leave a comment down below. We're very active down in the comment section. And if this video helped you at all, please consider grabbing your remote from us. It helps us fund these videos like this. Thank you guys for watching, and we will see you in the next one. See ya.